Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. You know what one of my favourite death scenes in games is? The ones from Batman Arkham, the series. There's so many good ones, but it's all a unique one that you don't see often in games. Because normally it just comes up, Dark Souls style, you died, or GTA wasted kind of thing, that's it restarts. But Batman took a different take on it where the people who killed you mocked you a little bit. And it's just different, but I really do like it. So we can take one here from Hugo Strange, where he'll walk in and mock you for a moment.
I knew I was better than you, Wayne. Now you have proved it.
And that's it. It just fades in, says something, fades out, and that's it. Then it goes to the screen saying, what do you want to do, kind of thing. And it has it for a variety of named characters in the game. So like there's Harley Quinn, because everybody loves Harley. But there's also, not on this video, but there's generic guard ones as well, where they'll just come up and they'll look at you or something like that. And I thought that's pretty cool, and you don't really see it often. So I'm going to take a leaf out of the Batman Arkham series book, and we're going to create a game over death screen based on this, where the character comes out, says something, animates, and then we fade in and show a menu. So let's get started. So this is actually going to be mainly about just juggling data and moving it in the right place, to be honest. So if you think about all the ways you can die in the game, you can die by a generic guard, so he kills you, fine. You can die by a named guard, so, I don't know, we'll call him a named guard in this instance. You could die by drowning in the non-existent water. You could die by sword, whatever you want. You could be burnt alive, crushed, anything like that. But you could also die as part of a quest, and that might be something else unique we could do. So if you're on a specific quest, for example, they can mock you saying, haha, I told you I'd steal the hourglass before you, or something like that. All unique things like that we can do, which I think would be really cool to add in. So where do we start? So we are actually going to create a new map, but it's not going to be a dev map this time. It's going to be an actual map we're going to use. But I am going to copy a dev map because it's already there set up. So I'm just going to come and copy my State Trees dev map and paste it into maps. And you may not have this one, but that's fine. I'll show you what's on it in a moment. But I'm just going to call it m_ for map or level, either way. I'll call it death scene, and I'll open this up. So all this map is going to have on it is just a plane on the floor, and I'm actually going to come and get rid of everything else, really. So all this is going to have on it is a floor, the player start, which we're not even going to use, so I might actually get rid of that. And then the ultra dynamic sky, or a lighting system, anything you want. And that's pretty much all you need. Super simple. So a key part of the Batman one is it's in a very dark area. You're laid on the floor, you're looking up kind of thing, they come over and mock you. So what I'm going to do just for testing is I've gone to Mixamo, which I'll link in the description, and I've just got this laying breathless animation here. So if I come and simulate it here, all it is him just breathless moving up and down like that. That's it. We're not actually going to use it, we're more so using it for positioning and sizing, because we don't want the character this close to his face unless it purposely has to be. And for generic recording style, positioning and such, we've got it in a nice way. So all I'm going to do with this guy is I'm just going to position him at 0, 0, 0, so he's in the middle of the world. And I'm going to press the end key to put him on the floor. If you've got a better animation for sizing, that works. So I have already done some of the artistic work outside of this to position it in the right places and such, because I'm not an artist, but I don't want to spend the entire video fine-tuning it by details. You can do that. If you're an artist, you're going to absolutely love this. So what I'm going to do is use my preset values, and I'm just going to move him on the y-axis 150, like so. I'm going to rotate him 180 on the z-axis, like so. And now, he isn't at 0, 0, 0, which is this node here, I believe, right here. But instead, he's offset, so we can place the camera that needs to be looking up, roughly in his head, looking up like so. But it's a nice size template that we'll probably delete later on. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the camera up, so it's roughly looking at a decent point where we want it. Now, a good point for this is to actually have the animations in their prime position, I guess you can call them. So I have gone and recorded a bunch of different animations we can use. And as per normal, I'm going to give a bunch of them away in the description. If you want to use them for your games, you're absolutely welcome to. I'll give a few ones away for free like I normally do, but then the rest will be on my Patreon. It's on the lowest tier, so more than happy for you to jump onto that if you want the rest of them. So I'll tidy them up and everything. There is one minor bug with them that I do need to fix, and I will eventually get around to fixing it, and that's just their thumb. But you can see they'll walk up, there's different varieties, you can see the thumb's a bit dodgy, and they'll stab somebody with a spear, but it works perfectly well for what we need. And it basically replicates a bunch of ones that you see on Batman. So we've got like a weaponless variety as well. So like if I come on to number 2, you'll see they'll walk up, they'll kneel down, they'll say something, and then they'll walk away. Nice and easy. And there's a bunch of different ones that I've recorded. All sorts of weird taunts and stuff. So like this one walks up into it, kneels down, says something. They all don't kneel down. There's like some of them with big hands and stuff. So he comes up, he's like, you are this big, or whatever he says, and he'll walk away. But with these animations, they're bound to the Cinti Mani. We can actually place it in the world, and you can see the actual pivot is purposely off-centered. So what this means, if we place it back in the center here, as we simulate it, they will walk into that 0 point, giving you the idea that they've walked off screen. So if I simulate this one, you'll see they walk into the position, and they kind of use your sizing correctly and walk away. So their prime position, what I was talking about, is if we get one of the kneeling ones and place this at 0, 0, 0 like so, if we simulate this, their prime position will be where they need to be in full focus of the camera. So where they've kneeled down and they're looking at you and talking to you like so. That's their prime position that we need to capture on the camera. So if we put the camera, say, here, it'll look really good. If we put it over there, then you're not going to really see it. So that's their prime position. If I replay this, or at least let them walk off, if we play it looking up like that, they will walk into the shot and look down. It'll look really cool. And all the animations have worked based on 0, 0, 0 being the central point. They all walk to the same, or roughly the same position to look down on the mannequin or the player. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab this Death 8, which is the one I'm using, and I'm going to find its roughly prime position, so probably about there, and then I'm going to go create asset, create animation, current pose. I'm just going to stick it in my root animations folder here, and I'll just go Death 8 prime pose. You don't need to do this for every single one. This is just to help us align the camera. But now that I've done that, if I delete that off and go back to my animations folder, I've got this pose here I can just drag in. If I center it again, it looks absolutely perfectly, so we can line the camera up. So I'm going to come and add a cinematic camera actor, like so. And what I'm actually going to do is right click it and choose pilot sign camera actor. And what this is going to do is give us a first person look at it where we can move the camera around and put it into position. So you can see here, even though our guy's not actually on the floor, that's completely fine. We can position this using the WASD. We can use the scroll wheel to get slower or faster movements. So I'm going to get up close and turn it down a bit. And we can also use Q and E to move up and down. So if I position it in his head like that and get the Mani just where it needs to be. So one thing that, if you've done any camera work at all, is you've seen the grid shapes, and I like to enable that to make sure I've got them in the prime position. So if I click perspective at the top and click cinematic viewport, it'll take us back out of the camera. But then if I come and reselect our camera again, we've now got this grid option up here, and I'm going to choose 3x3. From what my basic non-photography mind says, is you're meant to have the prime of the picture, or the shot, in the grid, the center grid, or close to the center grid. So I'm going to position this back in his head, and I'm going to make sure that the camera is roughly got the head in the centre shot, or the focal point, the place you want to look. So I'm actually just going to put it like that, so you're looking at their body but partially of their head as well. Don't move around again because it'll mess it up. So I actually want to change some more settings. So you can see they're actually very blurry at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the focus settings. I'm just going to disable it because different animations are going to have different focal points. I'm not going to go through every single one and change it. We don't need to see anything of the background. The only thing we need to see is the thing that's going to be in front of us. Everything else is going to be black. So I'm just going to disable the focus. I'm also going to disable look at tracking, so there's nothing on there tracked either. And I'm going to come and set my lens and my film back to basically pick something that works for you. And I spent a bit of time this morning and I figured 30mm zoom for me works okay. And it's at least at a decent position for something that I like. So I'm going to make sure I position it in a nice place. Yeah, so something like that works okay for me. If you are more into cinematics, please let me know your details below. What could improve this scene, this camera strength, if you wish. And then I'm going to come in, tick the eject button to get out. If you move now, you'll move your camera. So just click eject. And then we don't want the grid thing anymore. So I'm also going to come to perspective and just click default viewport, like so. There we go. So you can see the camera's now looking up at where the dead body would be. And you can see the person is in their prime position, which works okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to make the scene really dark because it needs to look dark. You know, you're dying kind of thing. So I'm going to come to ultra dynamic sky. I'm using a bit of an out-of-date version, but it'll still be the same thing. I'm going to set the time of day to be 0. So it's basically, you know, darkness. There you go. And I don't want the stars when you're looking up. You shouldn't see the stars. You're dying. You don't want to see the stars. You might do. Who knows? But what I'm going to do is come to the weather, and I'm just going to set it to overcast, so it's just full of clouds. Like so, there you go. So now we've got a pretty much almost dark scene. And one thing you'll notice if we go back to the Batman video is if I just go to a random character, you can see they are perfectly lit up, but they're not unlit. So like you can see there's a small glowing part on her arm here and like the front of her legs here, so suggesting there's a light pointing directly on because everything around her is black. And like on Two-Face is the one I used it for earlier, you can see it fades in the scene, which is fine, but there's certain spots of him which are lighter than normal. So like you see here, there's a shadow under his arm here and on the outside of his arm, but this arm's really light. So what I'm thinking is either the light is coming straight on or slightly off to the side, ever so slightly. So like his gun's here and it's causing a light shadow here on his face. So it's either coming off to the side, which I think is what it's doing, because it's hitting the gun, shadowing his face. This side's really bright except his arm here, which is covered by his body. So basically we're going to set some lights up. Again, I'm not super artistic with this stuff, so all I'm going to do for mine at least is add a spotlight. And again, you can actually pilot the spotlight to move it into position. And if you get some weird behaviours like this where it's like rotated oddly, just come and reset the rotation like that and then it'll fix it so you can look at it properly. But now we can basically align it to where we want. So I know with mine, I aligned it originally to the side like this, which is how I demoed it. And I'm going to unpilot it. And I've got some preset position settings that I've used. So I am just going to come and grab those. So I'll set the position to this one and the rotation to this one. I'll put these in the description if you do want my exact specific setup. But all I've basically done is positioned it at a nice place where it's looking up at the character like that. So if I press G to activate game mode, you can see it's pretty much lit up most of them, but these sides of it are a little bit darker, which is kind of what I like. You can see the blue leg there. When we delete him, you won't see him at all. But some other settings I've changed on it is I've set the intensity to be 16, so it's double the strength lighting. So you can see now we've got the effect of where half the face is darker and half the face is lighter, and you've got the shadow on the arm. So it's replicating that darkness feeling more. You can change more things if you need. The only other things I've changed is the outer cone angle, which I've set to 15.5, so it's a lot thinner. So the legs and stuff won't get as much light as the prime body pose there. So if you press G now, you can see, if we roughly position ourselves, we've got that character darkness feeling where they're the only thing in the world. And that's what I really liked about the Batman one. So you see I have got an error up here. I don't know where this error started coming from, because it's been fine for ages. Or at least I've never noticed. So if you are getting this multiple directional light thing, as you can see, I don't have any light. But apparently it's a super simple fix is by clicking the sky, scrolling down until you see the moon here, and then just searching for the forward shading priority and setting it to 1. That makes it disappear. I don't notice any differences at all with it, but yeah. So you may actually want to see the scene for a little bit more while we're working on it. So I'm just going to press Alt-3 to go to unlit view, and this is what we're seeing now. So the scene's coming along quite nicely so far. So we can actually see where we roughly are. So if I delete the prime pose and come and get another death animation, so let's just get a weaponless 5 and position that roughly in the right place. If I press Alt-4 to go back to lit view, if I select my camera as cinematic actor like so, if I press G to go to game mode and click simulate, you can see the character will come in, they'll say something, they'll walk off. And there we go. So you fade in, they come in, ha, told you I'd got you. Ha, got you. And then that's it, they walk off. You know, something like that. It works quite well, and it's looking really nice. We get our dialogue on, play some sounds, you know, it's going to look cool. So we've pretty much got the scene set up to handle what we need, but we actually need to now start using it in the correct way. Now, I've been sat thinking, not the best way, but the way I want it to work, and I'll explain to you as we go, is how do we pick which animation we want, which character we want to spawn, and which dialogue we want, because there's quite a lot there. And this is going to, of course, depend on your game entirely. But the query, if you wish, that I have, is when you die, we're going to log which faction killed you or which faction it belongs to, and this may be a guard has a specific faction, a boss has a faction. If you drown, it might just be what zone you're in, which is fine. Then it's going to be which NPCs killed you. Now, depending on your game, you may have different NPCs in your world. You may have different ways of telling which NPC it is. I haven't got my NPC data asset set up just yet for this game, which is going to be like to say which NPC belongs to which faction, their name, dialogue, stuff like that. So I'm just going to use a simple text variable at the moment. So all my NPCs have a text value to say what name they have, and they also have a faction there. If you don't want the faction, or if you have an existing way of differentiating between NPCs, that's up to you. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use Unreal damage type property, which we will look at in a moment, where we can specifically say, when you apply damage, what type of damage it was. So you'll see this a lot in like RPG games where you can be damaged by electric, fire, ice and stuff like that. And we can set it up really easily, built into Unreal, to say what type it is, but we'll make that optional on ours. So all the animations you saw on mine didn't actually say how you died, but it gives you the option if you wanted to use it. And then the final one, what we'll do for the query, is the quest. So if you're on a specific quest, like I mentioned at the start, where you may go, haha, I managed to collect the trophy before you did, that can be a specific death animation for that quest, which will be really cool. So, enough of me rambling on. How do we actually set this up? So, if I come to my blueprints folder, and inside my Struct folder, I'm going to create a new folder inside here called Death Scene. And inside here, I'll right-click Blueprint Structure. And I'll call this S_death scene, and I'll open it up. So all we're going to do is add our variables into here that's going to populate the query to build this death scene up. So on the first one, I'm just going to add the faction. And if you've not got a faction, you can skip this bit. If you've got other groups you want to use, you can add it here. And all this is going to be is my faction enum. So I have this races enum that I really want to rename from races to factions, but that's fine. Here, where I've got knighthood, elven, goblin, and Egyptian, they're my factions for the game. You may have bandits, unaffiliated, stuff like that. That might be up to you. So I'm going to add that in. The next thing I'm going to add is our NPC name, or this will be your data asset, but for me, I'll just come and call this text. So if you've got specific named characters like, Batman, Goblin, whatever, you'll put Batman in here and we'll be able to search for it. Or if you've got generic NPCs like a guard, then you'll put the guard in. So if you think of like Skyrim, you don't have like Bandit Nicolas Cage kind of thing. You have Bandit, and that's it. And they can share the same ones. Next, I will add the type of damage. So this will be our damage type. And this, in the code, will make this optional. But all I'm going to do is use Unreal's default damage type here. But I'm going to use a soft class reference, because we don't need to keep the damage type loaded in memory whenever we load this data table. So it's just more memory efficient if we use that. Next, I'm going to add the type of quest, so I'm just going to put quest. And then, if you've got a quest system, add some type of reference to that quest here, whether it's the quest name, a reference to the quest, anything like that. For me, I'm using the narrative quests and dialogue, so I'm just going to add the narrative quest in here, but I'm going to add a soft class reference. And if this is populated, we'll just use this when we're looking through it to say, is this quest currently active to use this one? If it's not got anything there, we'll just treat it as it doesn't belong to a quest. Next, I'm going to add all the NPCs that can use this specific set. So it might be that you have some specifically named NPCs. So on mine, if I click my NPCs folder, I've got these NPCs here, and I've got like an Egyptian, but an Egyptian guard as well, and an elf, and an elven guard, a knight and knight guard. And I'll have my named NPCs in here too. So I believe I've got one called like Sir Nightingale or something like that. He's a boss in the game. He'll have his own specific one when I get around to creating it. So these all come from the same blueprint here, which is my BP NPC. You don't have to use that, because technically all we're doing is just applying an animation to the mesh there. So all I'm going to do is set this to the NPC class. And in here, I'll search for my BP NPC. And I'm going to set it to a soft class reference. And then we can async load that in. But the difference with this one is I'm actually going to come and pick an array. Because I'm going to have multiple versions of guards. So I might have like 3 or 10 versions of the guard, 3 or 10 versions of the whatever, of the different guards in the game. So we can add that in as an array. So we can say, if you meet all this criteria, randomly get an NPC. And the final one, what we're going to have to come out of this for, is we're actually going to need to specify which animation can play. Now, in the animations I've used, most of them should be okay at 000. There may be the odd one, which I might have walked too forward for, or if you download one from online, or you record it, whatever, where it doesn't make sense at 000. So I've got this Death to Spear one here. If I simulate this, it might be that when they stab, like that, maybe it's not directly where you want it, maybe it's not at the camera. So we want the ability to say, for this specific animation, apply an offset. So maybe instead we rotate it a little bit like that. And then we simulate it like so. So they stab at the camera. You could go back and fix the animation equally for the sake of rotating it, 16 degrees? It makes all the difference for what you need, and it still works. So, if it lets me stop, there we go. What I'm going to do is actually come and create another struct next to this one, so blueprint structure, called s_death scene animation, and I'm going to open this up. Inside here, we will store the animation that it can play, and this can be either a montage or a standard animation. I'm going to use an anim montage, because then it lets us apply notifiers and stuff for what we're going to do later. And I'm going to set that to a soft object reference, so it's not always loaded in memory. We can specifically say when we're ready for it, load U in memory. And then finally, I'm going to add another variable, which will be the offset, so I'll just type offset. And to be honest, I'm going to set it to a transform. You may not need it, but this will allow you to change the location, the rotation, and the scale if you really want to. Really easily. If we go to default values, you can see we can just apply everything there, which is really nice. We can also pick our animations there. And with that done, we can go back to our death scene struct and we can finally add in the animation detail. We can keep this as an array, so if you've got multiple that work for this specific one, and we'll just add in the death scene animation like that. So that is our structure set up, where we can specifically say if you belong to this faction and your name or details is this, if you've been damaged by this, or you've also on this quest, then spawn one of these random NPCs and spawn one of these random animations. Now, if you have some NPCs that just categorically won't work with these animations, maybe you've got an NPC who's really tall, so certain animations don't work with him, you can either move the NPC into the animation detail struct here, or just set up another row, which we're going to do with a data table in a moment. There's no need to try and pick and choose, force it in, just finding a way around it that works for you. So in Batman's case, I don't think they'll have the faction, and I don't think they'll have the damage type at all. I think they just have the NPC name. They only have one NPC class, so Harley Quinn is Harley Quinn. They may have the quest one, I can't remember off the top of my head. So with that data organization thing done, I'm going to go to my Blueprints Data Tables folder. I'm going to right click Miscellaneous Data Table. I will set the row structure to our s_death scene, et_death scenes, and I'll open this up. So this is the point where we're going to crack on with it. One thing I will note on here is I was considering doing these with gameplay tags, and then we can have like a tag container to find it. But a tag container either lets you search individual tags or all of them matching, whereas with us, we have some of them where they may not match. So like the damage type and the quest are optional arguments. As far as I'm aware, there's no way in gameplay tags to say, search where these two are mandatory and these two are optional. So we're going to have to build that ourselves, but that is another way you can do it. You can specify gameplay tags in all of these to set it up that way. I've just gone a different route with it. So back to our data table, let's click add and we'll add a death scene in. The row name I'm not worrying about. There's nothing we can add into it that's going to work well enough, so you can call it anything you want as a placeholder if you wish. For the faction, I'll call it Knighthood. The NPC name, I'll just call Guard, because that's what it is on mine. The damage type, we haven't actually set up, so if I come back to my Blueprints folder, I'll create a new folder called Damage Types. That's if you want the damage types, that is. And all you do to create a custom damage type is go to Blueprint class and search for damage type, and you'll see you've got this damage type here built into Unreal. Click select, and I'm going to call it damage type _ we'll call it spear, because I've got a spear damage one, I guess. And you can open it up. You've got some default settings in there if you want. Caused by world, I believe, is like lava and drowning. So let's add a drowning one. Not that I've got anything to support that yet, but sure. So we'll do water. We could do, I don't know, fire. Do anything you want, really. That'll support whatever you're doing. And then to use it, it's really simple. If I just open up a random NPC. So when you're applying damage, typically you use the apply damage or one of them nodes. And if you click onto it, you can see you can give a damage type class, which now has all of our types here. So if I select, say, spear, because we died by that. And then when you receive damage, you will typically use the event on any damage or something like that, unless you're using a custom one. And then on here, it will give you a damage type object, which is basically this, but spawned into the world kind of thing. So from here, I can do like get caused by world, and it'll give us the variable or whatever you want like that. But we'll basically use the class, which is what we've already selected. So on here, you can see your different ones. So if we say this one's going to be the spear one, where he walks up and stab you with a spear kind of thing. So if we change this to sword, which is another one I've just created for the guards with the swords, that'll work. The quest I'm going to keep as none. It's not got a quest assigned to that one. The NPC classes, what classes support this? So I'll say the Knight Guard is the one that will have this one. And I'm only going to put one in because I've only got that. And then this is where we add the animation details. So you need to make sure that whatever animation you pick works with this guard. Otherwise it's going to freak out and you're not going to have a good time at all. So what I'm going to do for mine, which if you download the animations, they'll be rebound to the Cinti ones anyway. Otherwise, if you're using your own models, use the Manny ones. But I'm just going to come into the spear one. I'll select all of these. I'll right click and choose retarget animations. The target mesh will be my knight character, will be my fantasy soldier, which is the one that it's based on. If I search for the death animations here, I can select all 4 of the sword ones, so this is what you'll have. I can export the animations, go to animations. I'll go into the polygon fantasy and I'll just create a new folder inside here. I'll create a new folder inside here called death scenes. And inside here I'll just create a new one called swords. And I'll just export it to there like so. Click export. And then it should give us the 4 animations there. If we open it, you should see it should still work. There you go. So he's drew his sword out and then he's gone stab. That's it. We're looking okay. His hands aren't mapped properly. That's because they've got different names. I can fix that for myself later. Now the only thing left is to create the montages. So I'm simply going to highlight them all, right click and choose create anim montage like so. And it'll create montages for all of them. And now I can come back to here and I can basically assign the montages to it. So if I come to here and search for sword. Inside the fantasy, we've got our 4 animations. I can play it there. The offset, I'm going to keep as 0 because we don't need it. But for this one, I can probably come in and just add 4 animations for it. And I can make sure I pick number 2, number 3, and number 4. There we go. So we've got all our animations assigned to it. So now we can go along and assign a bunch of different animations for each faction, for each animation, for each NPC, anything you want. In the next tutorial, because this one is getting quite long, what we're going to do is create our death controller, or our death scene controller, which is going to look at how we died in the game, and then it's going to loop through here, querying each one of these columns until it finds something that matches the specification it needs, and then it will spawn that character in. It'll make them animate out, make them do their scene, and then we'll add the anim notifiers to tell it when to fade in, when to fade out, what to do, stuff like that. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you do want the rest of these sooner than later, they are available on my Patreon, which will go to helping me out. Otherwise, they will come to YouTube on a schedule at some point in the near future. So thank you for watching. I hope it helped. If you've got any improvements for the cinematography or anything like that, please let me know below and we can fix it. Thank you for watching. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.